welcome everyone to the Monday, maybe Tuesday at Baker's House with Pictures podcast. We're going to be talking about some Last Epoch news, the patch 0.8.3 that's coming out on the 3rd of September. Soon, very soon, 2 weeks, I believe. And I just announced, for those who weren't on stream to catch it, the next Race to Robus. That one's also going to be great. And there's information about it on Discord and on Reddit if you'd like to check it out. And yeah, today we're joined by NagTV, the one and only, the winner of second place on Race of Robus 1. Very close.
First loser.
Very close. Yes, but always first place. Nonetheless.
Thank you.
So yeah, how are you doing?
How's in your heart?
Oh, that's a given. Of course.
You're too sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing great.
How's the wife and kids? Everything good?
Well, if I had any, I'm sure they would be great. But yeah.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is at a bachelorette party, so
Mm-hmm.
I can scream as loud as
Oh, nice.
all the freedom in the world.
Nice. Yeah, man, that's such a good feeling. It's one of the things that I miss about living by myself. When I used to live in my apartment, just not having to worry about that. But yeah. Well, patch 0.8.3 is coming out. You might have heard of it. If you haven't, you should. And I believe it's going to be a new act release, right? I mean, the name kind of suggests it. The patch is named Sins of Majasa. You can see the trailer. I gotta play the trailer. I hope it's on focus on stream. But yeah, here's the trailer. It's sandy. It's deserty. Most likely a new act. So currently, how many acts do we have? I think it's 8, right? It should be the
Honestly,
9th act.
Yeah, I get a little bit confused in Last Epoch because we have these different time periods, but then we have different acts. That's not it doesn't always add up the same way.
That's true.
I think 8 is a good guess. Yeah, I think we're going to.
Yeah, this is 9. They said they want to do 13, I believe, 13 acts. So if this is either 9th or 10th act, there's still quite a bit of content to come out. I'm not sure if all 13 are going to be released on the full-on release of the game. But yeah, very excited. I feel like we need something new on the campaign. Because so much of Last Epoch gameplay, because of tournaments and all of that stuff, trying new characters is campaign, right? So having some new content, new stuff to do is going to be interesting. And given that it's desert-based, I wonder how it's going to play on to Act 2. That there's a lot of that in Act 2, right? Aside from the sewers part. They leaked a couple enemies too, right?
Yeah, I don't know what they're planning on, which time period they're putting Act 9 in, because we have ancient area and we already have a desert area. I don't know if they're gonna expand that part. I haven't heard much about it. We talked about it a little bit previously, but I haven't read up on all the news here, so might be something leaked that I haven't caught on to.
I don't think they've leaked anything of the new acts except for the new creatures that are coming out, and I'm not even sure if those new creatures are for the new act. I mean, for all we know, they haven't announced it's going to be a new act in the first place, right? It could be something different, but yeah. So that's going to be interesting to check out. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's coming out on 0.8.3. Is there anything you want to talk about in regards to the act stuff that I interrupted?
I mean, I heard that they're going to try to implement more of the ancient era stuff, which I heard a lot of people, not this patch, but in the future at least. When we look at it right now on the minimap in game, looks kind of empty. But yeah, that I'm curious about. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be in this patch.
Right, yeah. The ancient era, there's one of the zones, I think it's the ancient era, that only has 3 areas or 4 areas to it. And it's one of the most fun ones, one of the most interesting ones. So yeah, it would be nice to see some, dinosaurs and everything. That's a fun one. It would be fun to see some expansions on that. So yeah, there's going to be potentially a new act. We've heard a lot about Sentinel changes. Now, the Sentinel changes have been announced from time to time in the past couple of dev streams and posts. Let's see if I can find which one it is. This one is the Necromancer one. This one is the roadmap. And this one is for multi-strike. Okay, yeah, so a bunch of new Sentinel skills and stuff are coming out. We're getting Void Cleave, multi-strike, a bunch of changes to Judgment and other Sentinel skills. And on top, of course, of a whole bunch of uniques. Now, did you check out multi-strike and Void Cleave at all?
Not in detail. I saw when it was first announced, but I don't remember all the details, so you can catch me up a little bit.
Yes, okay, so multi-strike is one of the... It's gonna be on par with Rive and... What's the other one? Vengeance? Yeah, Vengeance. They have 0 mana cost, and you're supposed to interlace it with other skills. It's gonna have interactions with forging weapons. So you can see here there's a node. Is it the first one? What's the one that forges weapons? No, I'm mistaken. The forged weapon one is Void Cleave. Is it? Where's Void Cleave? Here's Void Cleave. I'm sure I saw forged weapons somewhere. Well, apparently it's not multi-strike. Well, I'm gonna go over it. So it's gonna summon swords. So basically every time you attack, the next one summons a new sword and hits a different target. So just like in Path of Exile, we have stats where strike skills hit a nearby target, right? It's gonna work the same way. Every time you attack, a new target's gonna be added. So the first one hits 1, the second one hits 2 targets, so on and so forth. And then it adds a mana cost. Of course, there's gonna be nodes that change, whether or not it costs mana or doesn't, and how much, and all that. So there's that part of the mechanic. There's interactions with Void Cleave that are coming out. So you get stacks every time you use multi-strike, and that increases damage and AoE on Void Cleave. They're really trying to do the whole combo thing, where you have one big hit. They tried it with Erasing Strike, but so far it hasn't really panned out for those kinds of skills, with the exception of maybe Firebrand, Flame Reef, which is, I think, one of the only ones that actually works that way properly.
Yeah, it has a special attraction if you attack more. So just a small question to the multi-strike. You said it's going to add more targets the more times you attack.
Yes.
So is there a cap to that, and is that
there
a
is
buff or whatever which decides? Does it have a timer? Like how often do you need to attack to keep it up?
Okay, so I can read it out actually. So multi-strike is a melee attack that grants a stack of armament if you hit at least one enemy. So you can't just spam it before combat and have all those stacks. And each stack causes an additional sword to strike a nearby enemy when you use multi-strike. That's what we were talking about, right? Now, additional swords cannot target the enemy you initially hit, so you can't quote-unquote shotgun, of course. And it stacks up to 2 times, and each stack lasts 3 seconds. So you can have, so you're basically hitting 3 enemies, and after 3 seconds, you lose 1 stack, I presume, because it says each stack lasts 3 seconds, right? You don't lose all of them.
And this is just the base skill.
Yes, so that's the base one. Then there's the first node, Bladestorm adds an additional sword per stack, but not an extra stack. So on the first stack, you would gain 2 swords. On the second stack, 4 swords, so on and so forth. So that's interesting that it didn't go for more stacks instead of just adding swords to each stack. But I mean, this is just a couple of the nodes. We don't know how exactly they're going to do it. The question here is it going to be better than Rive? Or is Rive still going to be better?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, as long as it's unique in a way, I don't think... as long as it fits different playstyles and so on, I think it's all good. One doesn't have to be necessarily better.
Right.
But it is going to be very interesting to see the specializations, because whenever they tease these kind of trees, like they did with the crow and the zombies and so on, you never can't exactly see all the synergies just by teasing a few notes here. But yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I'm saying that because mechanically they kind of function the same, because both Rive and multi-strike are going to be somewhat scaling abilities where they start off really weak and then you ramp it up at a quick pace, and cost 0 mana, enhances other skills is very similar. But I feel like it's gonna change mostly in regards to how you can proc it on block. So really it's gonna boil down to the specs, right? So you can proc multi-strike on block. So if you're doing, this looks like a Forge Guard skill, but it looks interesting for Paladin if you go max block, right? And you're doing health on block, all that stuff.
We didn't get that far yet, but just the first thing that comes to mind is imagine the new shield where you have 100% block chance. Every time you get hit, you nearby from nearby enemies, you're probably need to strike, right?
That's true.
I wonder if that has, it says it has a 3-second cooldown, I see, so.
It doesn't include initial strike, yeah.
Yeah, because if it didn't have a cooldown, that would be absolutely nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 second. Yeah. Man, my issue with that is that there's very limited sources of cooldown reduction. And 3 seconds is actually a fairly long amount of time. So if you could bump it down to maybe 2.5, 2 seconds, it could be interesting.
It's a very, very hard balance. And it is something in general, I feel like some very interesting skills in Last Epoch suffers from too long cooldowns from different procs and so on. But it's a fine balancing question where if you make the cooldown too low, it just becomes absolutely broken, right?
Yeah, so, that is true. Yeah, it's the same issue with unique items that have procs on them, right? They have a very long cooldown, and it makes it rough to actually build around it. Yeah, that's two problems with this. One of them is the cooldown on proc on block, and the other one is that I have attempted playing a Reflect Forge Guard with Rebuke, and it's not reliable for boss fights at all. It's not. It's going to be mostly a clear thing, right? So it's going to be useful for builds that struggle with clear and good with bosses, but it's not a whole lot of them. I mean, maybe you could actually open up some stuff now that I think about it. Maybe it'll be fun to just check how that actually plays out with auto skills. Because where do you think it would fit best? Like what would you pair it with?
Well, I haven't read this whole section myself, so I've only seen what we've introduced so far. But if you're saying are you talking about which class it would fit best, or
like what skill would you pair it with? I mean, it has interactions with Void Cleave, right? So that's one.
What was the interaction again? So it says Void Cleave
consumes the stacks, yes. And deals more damage and larger AoE, but it consumes all the stacks. So it's a combo type thing, right? Alternating between the two.
And we don't have the numbers on this yet.
No,
that's
no
the
numbers.
Thing where it's not yet ready yet. They don't put the numbers yet. So obviously, depending on these numbers, that could be super powerful. I remember when we were talking about Void Cleave at some point. I think we had a small discussion with Reimer at some point where people were saying that skills like this need to do something spectacular to be used.
Yes.
Because you're taking up 2 skill specializations, right? And that's quite a lot of potential you put in. Like a lot of your build that gets invested through those 2 skills. So unless you have like a really incredible amount of damage or some unique interaction, like some either quality of life or something like that, it's going to be very, very difficult to make it interesting for people to use.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, it truly.
With this nullifying carb, it sounds like they're trying to make it a high damaging big slam attack.
Yes.
With that specific specialization. That said, they could have other nodes that changes the way we're going to use it. But if it's this interaction alone, they need high damage and high area, right? And it's a little bit of a boring way to, where it's just damage and area, right? But we don't know. Could be a lot of other stuff hidden in there.
I mean, from what we've seen so far, the reason it works with Firebrand Flame Reave is because Flame Reave just hits the whole screen. So pretty much screen wide AoE. And it does a lot of damage. That's the reason it works, right?
Yeah, and when you think about it, unless there's, like I said, some other unique interaction you really want out of those skills, then you need to cover your clear and your damage, right? It's, especially when you're spending 2 specialization slots on it. So yeah,
it's true.
it'll be...
So yeah, there's multi-strike. The other skill that we have been talking about is Void Cleave. No, that's the Warpath one. Yeah, here's Void Cleave. So Void Cleave is the one we were talking about. It's supposed to be a big hit. It has a cooldown and a cost of 15. Now, the cooldown stuff again, same thing, has to be strong, has to be large. Even if you're not using the multi-strike interaction, just the fact that it has a cooldown is really rough. It has interactions with Time Rot, some Health Leech, which is kind of a non-factor. Interactions with Abyssal Echoes.
Yeah, that it's only 2-handed weapons.
It is. It has restrictions.
Yeah.
Now they said, two-handed sword or axe. So no pole arms. Not that anyone was planning on doing it. No maces, right? So it's just sword and axe. So no mace means no lucerne, which is a high base crit blunt weapon, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's good with one of the new axe spaces that we can talk about later too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then swords. Swords are good for the void penetration. I forgot what the name of the base weapon is, right? So yeah, axes and swords. And it has interactions with Abyssal Echoes. Now, they said they wanted to rework Abyssal Echoes in the way that it functions. So maybe it might not be all that productive to think about it too much in regards to how it interacts with Abyssal Echoes if they change it. They haven't said whether or not they're going to change it in this patch, though. So the way that it currently works, it's actually really, really interesting because you can have pull on your Abyssal Echoes. It's one of the ways that I've actually been using it. So you can change the damage, get heal out of it, and get pull and very big AoE. So because, I mean, if Clave struggles with AoE, getting the pull is going to be great, right? Because your AoE is small, pulling enemies always helps a little bit, right?
Yeah, but it has to not be small. I mean, honestly, 4 seconds on a damaging ability, I don't know. I feel like we need some area.
It's a large cooldown, isn't it? Yeah. But here's the thing. There's a pattern here, and I'm kind of disappointed that it's it's designed kind of around Void Knight, because Void Knight's already the more combo-based class, right? But this is just looking like they're trying to make combos work with this, because there's multi-strike, which enhances Void Cleave, and then Void Cleave knows that enhance Erasing Strike and interact with Abyssal Echoes. So in theory you could... Okay, so let me read this out. So the Obliterator node makes it so that Void Cleave hits one enemy, the next Erasing Strike is always a crit, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is true that Void Knight gets a lot of crit multi, but doesn't have a lot of crit chance. So that could be interesting, right?
It sounds but I'm biased, right? I'm a hardcore player. I didn't really introduce myself properly. But imagine a build like this. You're using multi-strike, you're using Void Cleave, and then you're using Erasing Strike, and you want to specialize 3 skills like that. What do you have left for your defenses at this point?
Yeah.
And Sentinel is one of the classes that has a lot of defensive options on the specializations, right? It better be damn good if you want to spend 3 skill specializations on that kind of combo, right?
It does. Or you sacrifice lunge or some utility skill, right?
And there might even be some defensive options in there in the trees.
Maybe. I don't think there are gonna be. Maybe with multi-strike because of its nature, but I don't think either Void Cleave or Erasing Strike.
It doesn't sound like it, but you never know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, if you're doing Void Knight, your defensive options are none, basically. That's the thing about Void Knight, right? You use Reversal to get health back, but that's not a reliable one. Use Anomaly for speed and CDR. Doesn't have a whole lot of defensive sides of it, other than leech.
You
right?
could use. So I know you don't get the holy aura. What's it called? Sorry, it's been a few weeks.
There's holy aura from paladin. Yes.
Yeah, obviously that's
you lose them.
Paladin specialization, but you have ring of shields. That's only 5 points in the
Forge guard. Yes.
Forge guard. Yeah, Forge guard. And don't you get access to Sigils of Hope? It's like 15 points.
Sigils of Hope, I believe. I think Healing Touch, which should be removed eventually, is 5 points, and Sigils is 15.
Yeah, so you could get those two, like even for Void Knight. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good build, but it's something to consider. And also you have Juggernaut stance, which actually is super useful for hardcore. 50% more armor. That's just nuts. Obviously, it's not gonna stay that way when it gets a specialization tree. Who knows? It might get a specialization tree if they're looking into Sentinel, right?
I believe what they want to do with that stance and every stance in the game is remove it and add it to the passive tree. That's what they've done with the hammer stance thing that no one uses with the Forge Guard. That's what they want to do. They don't want to, because they feel like however way they decide to make a skill tree for it, it's going to be either overpowered or just weird, right? Because it's such a 0 or 1 situation. It doesn't have a whole lot of room for modifying the way that the skill works. So they just want to add it to the passive tree. So eventually, I believe it's going to be removed and added to the tree. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, right. I mean, honestly, I think the only reason you don't see it on every build, even in softcore right now, is just because it slows you down. And in softcore, you kind of wanna zoom a little bit, you know.
Yes.
But in my opinion, it doesn't even slow you down that much. I feel like if you're trying to push harder content on hardcore, at least it's a very good investment. And it's kind of interesting also in the fact that it doesn't have a skill tree. So if you have 5 specializations with something that doesn't necessarily need to be on your toolbar,
yes,
you can have something like Smite proccing from idols, but you don't actually need a key to press because it goes off automatically. And then you have an extra slot for your Juggernaut stance if you just want to be a beefy boy. Yeah,
in theory you could do it with Sigils. You can proc it on kill and have it recast when the duration ends, right? But it's not reliable if you're not using it yourself. Yeah,
it doesn't feel as good to me, but
right. No. And then on top of making a Rising Strike always crit, there's a node that makes it not be able to be dodged. It's similar to the one we have on Earthquake. No one really uses it. It's handy if it doesn't cost you much. If you feel like there's not too much stuff that you can invest to, it opens up room for you to run different monoliths that have dodge on them, right? So if it's free, hey, might be useful. It adds base crit.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's honestly for me, that's the big part of this.
Yeah, the crit.
Because base crit just straight up enables being able to go crit sometimes.
Yes.
You don't want to invest too much into crit chance, and having high base crit makes that possible sometimes, right?
Right, yeah. And the fact that it makes Rising Strike always crit means you can just have a little bit of crit with the base chance and not worry about the crit on Rising Strike at all. Yeah. Right? So yeah, that's Void Cleave. They've also talked about how they want to rework Judgment. So the way it's going to work is this patch, they're just going to fix a couple bugs and fine-tune the skill a little bit, but it's not going to be changed the way that they want it to be. So they have a vision for what they want Judgment to be like, and it requires a lot of changes. That's going to come in the future, in other patches, not this one. However, Mike said on the podcast, that on the dev stream, that Judgment has a bug on it that causes it to basically do almost no damage compared to what it's supposed to be, with the aura that it has a consecrated ground, right? So that's going to be fixed. Did you play with Judgment at all? At any point?
I played it through you because you talk about it.
For me, yeah, all the time.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
true.
know you're gonna be very excited about this
I
build. And
am. I
honestly,
am.
if it actually has some kind of base damage number, something we can scale, I might play it. I mean, the play style sounds fun. Like it sounds interesting. It's a little bit of a different play style. But before, honestly, the numbers just look so bad to me that I just couldn't see it actually being good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm completely biased on this one because I already have the character ready with all the uniques. I have the race shield, I have Orion's Eye, all kinds of things. It's all ready to go, just waiting for the patch to roll out. I'm definitely going to be playing that. But yeah, curious how they want to change it later though. But yeah, Sentinel changes. There you go. A bunch of other stuff is going to be changed. They said they want to change Abyssal Echoes, a bunch of other skills. Things going to be revamped. Not everything has been revealed yet. So there's all the Sentinel changes. So yeah, let's take a look at the Necromancer. So they made a post talking about how they want to change Necro specifically, right? Now Necromancer is a problematic class for two reasons. One of them is Dreadshade Taunt. For those who don't know, there's an abuse you could do with Dreadshade and Bone Golem, where you can pretty much have a permanent taunt for the whole map on a golem that just doesn't die, and so you don't take any damage ever. And that's a problem, of course. The second issue is that half of the tree on the Necromancer is geared towards skeletons, right? So it feels like you can't really not play with skeletons as a Necromancer a lot of times. Even if you're playing with a different skill, they just add so much. And there's little room for improvement. So they're going to be changing Necromancer and minions in a lot of ways. Now, one of the things that they want to change are Wraiths. Now, you played Wraiths, right? You did a Wraiths build recently.
Yeah. So
how did that turn out?
Hardcore Visions race. I tried. Just honestly, we had a lot of skills banned for that race. So Lich Form was banned. We banned Dreadshade, and
yeah,
the zombies everything was banned. So even me doing the race, I didn't see the full potential because Dreadshade was banned, right? They mentioned in this blog post as well that any minion skill just gets such a huge chunk of their damage from the Dreadshade. So it felt mandatory. Yes. So my Lich build, it turned out, not my Lich build, my Necromancer build with Wraiths turned out to just be like a slideshow, basically, which they also mention here. Basically, the way you play Wraiths at the current patch, it's that you just try to get as many Wraiths out as possible. So I was just stuck there in the corner with 2 FPS, and I have a pretty decent computer. With 150 plus minions, whatever that temporary 4-day league let me acquire, through my gear. And it was just a complete slideshow. I ended up dying, just from a frame. I mean, you couldn't see anything basically. So it's part of what they're trying to fix.
Right. Yeah. Just like I said, Wraiths are all about spamming as many as you can currently. And it forces you into kind of a corner in regards to how to play Wraiths. So the way they want to change it is they want to make it so that it doesn't decay anymore. So of course that's nodes. It's not a change to base skill. Base skill still functions normally, but you want to add a node where it doesn't decay, but you only limit it to 2 Wraiths. Do you think there's enough scaling in the tree that even without a decay, having, let's say, 4 Wraiths
not if is they good enough? Change more, but I read a little bit. This is some of the stuff I actually managed to read. And they are mentioning that they're greatly buffing the base stats of the minions and so on. So they're going to be stronger Wraiths. So obviously, depends on the numbers. I'm sure that they're going to be somewhat viable in their new states, and they didn't drop the ball completely on this one. Because obviously, when you have a skill that could have hundreds of minions before, the numbers need to be way different if you can have like less than 10. I don't know, there's probably going to be certain specializations or items so you can get more Wraiths, but I don't think they're going to let us get above, let's just say 10 as a number. I think they're going to keep it rather low.
I mean, look at these 2 passives. It says 4 total. But there's probably other ways to increase it, I'm guessing.
Might be, yeah. Just guessing,
Yeah.
So obviously the stats has to be way stronger, and they are talking about that here as well. So
yeah,
I'm sure they hit a good spot, but we have to wait and see, try it out.
Yeah, well, since we were talking about it, we might as well cover the minion changes. So basically the way they're changing is they're making it... Okay, so the way that it kind of works is with every level, you get some minion power, which is increases damage as a more multiplier and reduces damage taken. So basically at level 100, like it says here, you have a total of 40%, right, power, which adds 1% both damage and less damage taken. They're changing it so that at level 100, you get up to 45, right? So
yeah,
it's...
That part I didn't reach, but that's a pretty significant buff, right? The way, especially when you're talking about straight damage reductions, that it is a damage reduction, right? It's not a increased life. So
it is.
That obviously gets more and more powerful the higher numbers you get to. So going from 40 to 45 is more valuable than going from 0 to 5, for example. Obviously, so it's a pretty big buff. And it was already very impactful. I feel like, especially in the tournaments and so on, me getting level 100, it felt a lot different, you know, once you get that damage mitigation and the more multipliers in there.
It's true.
Nice.
Right.
Very nice.
So yeah, we got the race changes. Races they seem really fun. Whenever I look at the spec tree, it looks very interesting. And it's kind of a shame that it doesn't always turn out to be too great. So yeah, we'll have to see if it actually becomes good or not. It's really what it's going to come down to. Okay, so Dread changes. So Dread Shade has been a problem because of the taunt. Now, the way that they're addressing it this patch is they're making it so that the taunt only lasts 4 seconds, and it has a cooldown of 18, so that's a very big cooldown. Very big cooldown. You're gonna have to actually choose when to use it if you want to have the taunt. And even though it's good that they're addressing it, I gotta say I'm kind of disappointed with the fact that they just didn't fix taunt in the way that it works. I was expecting taunt to be addressed in a much broader manner. But it does seem like they're changing it with other skills too. It says here, this is not an isolated change, and other sources of taunt in Acolyte and other classes have similarly been addressed for 0.8.3. I would like to see a future change to taunts.
So the way they temporarily changed it, what it sounds like is that they're basically adding a cooldown, so you cannot have 100% uptime, right? Taunt, it's a difficult one, because if you're relying heavily on taunt, which we did in the broken stage, where we are pushing like 700 waves in a weekend tournament, I ended up winning that one by playing this broken build. You're 100% relying on the taunt in that tournament, right? So if it's not up 100% of the time, it's almost like you don't have it has to be super reliable at that point if you're gonna get one tap by everything. But obviously we're not supposed to necessarily go to 700 waves, obviously. And it's a dangerous ability to have in the game if you in any way can reach 100% taunt uptime.
That's true.
And it works 100% effectively like it did. It's just too broken. I don't. It's a hard one to balance, because okay, they pick one here with the cooldown, which doesn't necessarily feel great. An 18-second cooldown is a long time. But it's just too powerful if you let it. I mean, do you have any suggestions how you would have done it instead?
Well, it has to have a cooldown. It needs to have a cooldown, but it needs to be reliable enough that every time you have a rough encounter, you can use it, right? So you don't want to be having it 100% of the time throughout a monolith or a boss fight or something, but being able to pop it on difficult situations is important. Otherwise, it's just not a reliable defense, right? And you have to reduce... The biggest issue with taunt is that it covers way too large of an area. It's way too big of an AoE. If you ever played with an arboreal circuit, you know how much of a pain it is when you summon one of the trees and suddenly the whole map like 2 screens away is getting taunted. You can't really
like
kill anything.
Yeah,
it's pretty much a global taunt, which is insane. That has to be addressed. So what I would like to see is a reduction in the AoE and an actual visual cue as to what that AoE is. So when something taunts, you have a slight, very low-key visual cue of the circle around the unit that's being taunted, so they can gauge what's taunted and what's not. I feel like that would make it way more smooth and easy to use in that sense.
My first thought with that is that seems somewhat fair if you're just doing like normal mobbing, like doing a monolith or whatever, and clearing a lot of monsters, because there's always going to be more monsters coming in and they're not necessarily all taunted. But your way of fixing it still sounds completely broken against bosses and so on. Because if they're taunted, the bosses they don't necessarily move that much, and that way you could essentially have 100% uptime of your boss taunts as well. So maybe the boss needs some kind of immunities or whatever. Not straight immunities, maybe, but like if it has been taunted, then it can't be taunted again for certain. I don't know.
You could do the fear approach, right? Where something can only be feared once. So if you use fear, you can use it again on the same unit, right?
Yeah, but that's just makes it straight up worse than what they're doing now, right? Where because now we actually have a limit to, we can technically reapply it, but let's be honest. What kind of mob is still alive after 18 seconds again? Right? I mean, it's a cooldown, so, and it only lasts for 4 seconds. That's another thing. That's not particularly long duration. So,
one way you could address it is using threat mechanics instead of a straight up 100% taunt. So you make it so that it taunts units, but the threat generated by the taunt reduces with time, right? That's one way to do it too, but I'm not too sure what the pros and cons of that are.
So if you're doing millions of damage, you're just straight up taunting it anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's rough, right? I mean, the Bone Golem has threat generating passives on it, and it doesn't work too well by itself without the taunt. Yeah, that's true. And then on top of that, we're getting damage changes in volatile zombie interactions, right?
Yeah, but I feel like, just to finish off the taunt stuff, that it's way better the way they're choosing to do it now than what it was. I don't feel like the current taunt has any place in the game. So
of course,
good on them to actually do something about it. Maybe down the line it's going to be different.
One thing that we didn't talk about is that they're not just changing that, they're also changing how strong it is. Currently, Dread Shake gives you more damage, and from point 8.3 onwards, it's going to give you flat necrotic damage and increased necrotic damage. So it's not going to just work with any minions, regardless of damage type. And there's going to be conversion to poison. So it's going to be necrotic and poison focused. Now, I'm not sure exactly which builds it really fits in. You can do necrotic with Skeletal Mages, I believe, right? They have a necrotic one with Hungering Souls, question mark? No, it's Necrotic Barrage. It's the Barrage one, right? Hungering Souls is for Death Knights, I think.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what you're talking about with the Hungering Souls. Hungering Souls can be used by Death Knights, that's true.
And then there's the Necrotic Barrage from the Skeletal Mages that you can get. This is actually interesting. It actually opens up room for some interesting builds to be made. I feel like there's a lot of that, and we're just gonna have to find out which ones are gonna be good and which ones are not. But it's gonna take some time looking at the passive tree and planning it out. And they're changing Abomination. I haven't played Abomination at all. I don't think you have either, right?
Not much other than testing basic stuff,
Yeah, so apparently Abomination used to be broken back in the day due to some mechanics that it had, and it had to nerf it a lot, right? And it became almost non-viable. So now they're changing it again. They're adding interactions with Volatile Zombie. Now this is interesting. If you consume a Volatile Zombie, it gains a Tail Slam, which is just like the Abomination from the first Monolith, right? I think it's exactly the same, except a much smaller AoE. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
That's
I
cool
wonder the
because,
cooldown, how it's gonna be.
So although I didn't play, I've seen build videos and so on and people playing it on stream, and it seemed like it had insane single tire. And I think you can actually still push it to insane single tire, but one of the issues is it's pretty clunky. It can die. It dies over time, right? I think
Does,
so.
yeah.
You have, imagine if you are doing it with like Wraiths and you're summoning hundreds of Wraiths, and so clunky that you have to re-summon it and keep it up. And it also struggles a little bit with AoE from what I've seen anyway. So this looks like a great AoE clear, basically.
Yeah, I think that part's going to depend on whether or not it has a cooldown and how the cooldown works. It probably is going to have a cooldown, I'm guessing. Like most minion skills. If we would learn anything from Sabretooth, right? Yeah.
It also depends if it's an active or not. Like, because a lot of the Primalist pets have very long cooldowns on their active abilities.
Yeah.
But if this is just like a skill it uses by itself, sometimes I don't know. But for sure, it's probably gonna have it must have a cooldown. I'm sure. Yeah.
They're changing other things about Abomination. Can't find it. Where is it? Is it up there? There's some Bleeds of Wraiths. Ace of Undeath. Oh yeah. Okay, here it is. Okay, this is an interesting one. It makes it there's a node in Abomination that makes it so that it can only consume skeletons, and it does not decay unless you're actually using skeletons. So basically, if you consume them and you don't summon any more skeletons, the health of the Abomination doesn't decay anymore. Right?
Is that... I read it a different way, where it's if you don't use more than 3 of each skeletons, then it doesn't. But does that mean you can... It
says skeletons or skeletal mages.
Yeah.
So you can, in theory, you could have like 2 skeletal mages. You can do Archmage stuff, right?
The way I read it was... Well, I can't read it on the stream. Sorry, the quality is...
Let me see if I can increase. Can I zoom in? No, I cannot. Wait.
I can find...
it says you can now only summon minions from the summon skeleton and summon skeletal mages skills to create the Abomination. So you cannot consume anything else, right?
It's +3 or. But the thing is, when you summon the Abomination, you kill the mages. So, okay, sure, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the unless you have +3 is after you summon the Abomination, you can have 3, or you can only use 3 to summon it with. I don't know.
That would just be terrible. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just the simultaneous use. I think you just cannot have both an Abomination and 3+ skeletons.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask is, so if I read it, you can now only consume minions from the summoned skeletons, some skeleton mages, which create blah blah blah. Okay, so let's imagine you have, what is it, like, let's just say, I don't remember what the actual cap is, but like 10 archers and 5 mages or something like that.
That's cool.
Let's say you actually had those 15 total skeletons and you summon them with Abomination. That's still fine, and then you can only use, let's say, 3 mages on the side of the Abomination. Is that how I'm supposed to read it then?
I presume that's the case, yeah. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it actually is trying to do.
And now when I read it again, that could be how it is,
Yeah.
Once again.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to just kind of see how it turns out with numbers and everything. It sounds interesting because, as they write, part of the problem for some people is that they want a little bit of a less active play style with, like they don't like spamming buffs all the time. Personally, I don't mind, but it's nice to have the option of more permanent minions.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the Necromancer like archetype appeals to people who want to have a less active play style overall. It's that way in other games too, so it would make sense. And Primalist kind of fits the role of the more active summoner, right? Constantly using totems, minion skills, heals, and everything, right? So it would make sense. Of course, it would be good for Necro to have both options, of playing an active playstyle and a more passive playstyle, but I see where they're trying to go with this.
I just think they're trying to not make it mandatory, because it seems like most of the dread shade being more permanent, not exactly 100% permanent, and the abomination being pretty much permanent is specialization choices, right? So you can still do it the old way.
That's
which
true.
is good. I think it's good to have the option.
Yeah, those are.
With the, I'm just saying, with the abomination, like the only problem was just it's so clunky to summon.
It is. Yeah,
that's the problem. Because it's a cool minion.
Yeah,
very cool.
It is. Oh, it's really cool. It's really nice. It's a play style and a kind of skill that always sounds interesting in games, but it seems like it never managed to pull it off quite right. Having that one big minion instead of the multiple minions, right? We've currently seen examples of attempts of pulling that mechanic in other ARPGs, and it didn't turn out too great. So yeah, it would be nice to see if it actually turns out good. We'll see. I'm sure someone's gonna come up with something, definitely, for sure. But yeah, the only necro change that I think we didn't talk about is the fact that they're changing the race on the passive tree. So there's a whole bunch of passives and skill specializers that mention race, blood race, putrid race, and there's apparently people are getting confused about what counts as a wraith, what doesn't, what skills of what. So they're changing all of those to skeleton vanguards and other types, other names basically, but they function the same. So there's no confusion.
With good reason. The confusion, right? Because they mentioned here, it's literally called the same. Like,
it is.
You can have putrid wraiths from the skill tree, and you can have them in the specialization tree. And apparently they don't count as the same minion, right? So
they don't. Yeah.
It's very confusing, but they're fixing it. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, so aside from necro changes and sentinel changes, we're getting, we're getting the new Primalist visuals. That's gonna be great. And the shapeshifter changes are not gonna come out in 8.3. They're gonna come out later, but the visual part's gonna happen now, right?
Does that mean that the lizard is gonna have to drink from his shoe again?
Probably. I'm not up to date with what the bats are.
But I'm not 100% up to date either, but I thought he was drinking from his shoe because they didn't nerf werebear, and I think they said
I think they're nerfing. Yeah. I think Mike said on the last dev stream that they're gonna change Boulder's Wrath and the charge interaction. Apparently, it's still gonna be viable and it's still gonna work, but they're gonna change it so that it's not the way it is right now, basically. So I'm guessing that nerf is gonna come, but what I'm talking about is the shapeshifting rework, because they want to overhaul the entire shapeshifting mechanic. That's not going to come out this patch. That's going to come out later.
Yeah, right? I mean, there's a reason that basically straight up all transformations on the Primalist are banned for every tournament, right?
Yeah.
We don't even get to play Spriggan form either. So.
Yeah, I don't know. My issue is not even that they're too strong. It's that they're not fun to play with. They're not fun to theorize around. You can move your skills around. You can do a lot of things. That's really what I would like to see changed when they actually overhaul it.
You're pretty locked into a certain set of moves, and it feels like they're not balanced around being a permanent uptime kind of thing. So when not, I didn't mean balanced, but they're not made for it. It feels like with being stuck to those few skills, because it gets kind of uninteresting. It's not very creative. You can't switch out skills and so on, so it seems like you're not supposed to stay in that form forever, basically. But you can. That's
Yeah, if you look at the design, it seems like they had an intention with shapeshifting for it to be used a certain way when they first designed it. And you can see it on the passive tree because there's a lot of buffs and things that happen when you go in and out of transformation and all of that stuff. They didn't intend for it to be a permanent thing. With all the mana restrictions and everything. And I think they might have changed their stance on it, or at least realized that it didn't work out as well as they thought it would, and it requires some kind of a change. I don't know if they're gonna stick to it and try and just make it good as a non-permanent thing, or if they're gonna change their minds you know?
But the thing is, from a player perspective, right? I feel like if you have a transformation that feels really good, players are always going to try to get as close to permanent uptime, you know, no matter what costs. You know?
That's true.
You see that in any game with like an ultimate ability or whatever. So, and that's usually because it's fun to play. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what direction they choose to take it with the changes and so on. I haven't heard much about it, so.
Yeah, me neither. They haven't released a whole lot about it. I feel like the only way that could work is if there's substantial differences in the playstyle in and out of shape. So for example, if you're doing a lot of clear, you go into shapeshift mode, and for a boss fight or a tough mob, you shapeshift out to use a certain skill, and there has to be a really good support for off shapeshifting and the transition between the two. It has to be done masterfully for it to feel good. It has to be very well done.
And something that doesn't feel good, which I've seen certain places, I don't remember exactly if it's with shapeshifting on Druid, but like a temporary, it could be with Totem sometimes as well, where you have defensive buffs for a certain amount of time. Like, let's say your Totem dies and you lose all your elemental resistance on. I don't want to rely on that as a hardcore, a temporary buff like that. And the same way, let's say I think there's something that gives you like resist when you lose your shapeshifting form or whatever, something like that, temporary buffs. I don't ever want to rely on temporary stuff like that for my defenses, especially resists.
Yeah, temporary defenses never work because the temporary defense you have always that works the best is movement, getting out of the way of things. So if you see a lot of damage incoming, you don't want to be pressing one of your defenses. You want to be moving out of the way, right? The temporary defenses never feel good. It never feels good because you always feel like you don't have them. You cannot play as if you had it, right?
Especially, I don't mind them so much as long as there's not like something as vital as resist. I don't want to rely on.
Oh no, that's that one.
But if we're talking about stuff like, let's say that Ring of Shields was more temporary and you couldn't keep it up forever, I would be fine. Let's say I have to apply my Ring of Shields before I'm running into a boss fight or something like that. I'm fine with like being able to pre-buff some amount of defense like that. But yeah, just something as vital as resist and so on. I don't like being temporary.
I don't know. I feel personally like Leech and Regen are the only defensive type of thing that actually works with a situational and cooldown focused approach. Actual defenses I'm not a huge fan of. Resists are completely off the book in this regard. I don't think anyone actually uses situational resists. It's such a core part of your character's defenses. You can't have it situationally.
Yeah, I've seen people do it on softcore, but it's just because it doesn't really matter too much if they have a death here and there, because some of them, like with getting resist from having your totems up, you're gonna have that 95+% of the time probably anyway. So if you don't mind taking a situational death here and there, sure, you can rely on it, but on hardcore it's just not an option in my opinion.
Yeah, it isn't. Definitely isn't. All right, well, so that's all the Primalist content we're getting, right? Now, there's going to be a ton of uniques. It's already been some time in the podcast, so let's just brush over the uniques real quick. Let's see, this is multi-strike. This is also multi-strike for people who didn't see it. Here's multi-strike.
You want to go,
of course, yeah.
Side note, also you said you might be editing some of this.
Yeah.
So if you want just more clips of some uniques and so on, we can take a break even at some point if you want.
Maybe, yeah. Well, but I don't know. We'll see how interesting. We'll see how interesting the uniques really are, because maybe there's isn't even all that much. Yeah, there's multi-strike. All right. Oh, we forgot something. Really interesting, actually. Forgot to talk about Warpath.
I read about that, but I saw some people getting excited about it. So fill me in.
Yeah. Okay. So So they're revamping Warpath in the way that it works, right? They're making, basically, Warpath had a couple problems. One of them was that you were very limited in the way that you could build it because you need mana cost reduction. So they're changing how many points it takes to get mana cost reduction on it. And so you can see here in the old node, you took a increased elemental damage. Okay, this is a very, very wise change. The way that it currently works is it costs less mana, but you take more elemental damage. That's bad. That's really bad. Especially in a hardcore setting, you don't want to be doing that. And they're changing it so that it reduces your ally res. So instead what you can do is you can have 105% resists, just overcap it. It takes a toll on your gear, of course. You're going to lose some survivability by not having as much health nodes or affixes on your items. But it's much more manageable. Much more manageable.
Because you have the option to actually... So it's way better to give players a choice, right? So it could have been even higher than 30. I'm not saying this is necessarily strong enough that you needed to have it higher, but it could be on another very, very strong ability. You could have like minus 80 elemental resist or whatever. As long as you have an option to actually build for it, then you can mitigate it, so it doesn't feel like insanely bad on the... Obviously, it would have to be very, very, very good to have minus 80, but it's just a... I like this.
80 is a lot. Yeah, I like it a lot too. This is... I knew there was something about forged weapons. I talked about it at the start. So this is what is going to be interacting with. So Warpath is now going to have interactions with forged weapons. When you're spinning every 5 seconds, you're going to summon forged weapons. Now, I'm not sure how good forged weapons are. I think what I've heard is that they die fast. Shout out Mr. Hooster in chat, who's checking out the podcast. In 5 seconds is a long time. That doesn't sound too great to me, unless you have some other kind of forged weapon spawn, right?
Yeah, I did play with the forged weapons as a challenge on Hardcore Soul Self-Found, doing a campaign challenge. But this is just me trying to play with them as early as possible because the stream voted for it. And we managed to do it in a reasonable amount of time. But they never felt too powerful for me because I didn't make a build around them. I think it's a very, just from a mechanical perspective and as a skill perspective, I think it's a very interesting thing to have in a game, these like temporary minions you can build around, especially on a melee character. I really like the idea. So it's just about getting the numbers right, in my opinion.
Right. I think there's other sources of generating forged weapons that are not all that reliable or intense. There's the set piece on the chest body armor you can use. There's other sources, I think, on the tree. So if you can pair this up with something, maybe the 5-second cooldown isn't too bad if it adds up. But if it doesn't, every 5 seconds is complicated. Very, very complicated. Unless there's some way to buff the forged weapons that are way stronger than they currently are, right?
From my perspective, which I don't remember exactly how strong the forged weapons are, how long they last, but it could be a lot of fun for me if I could create like not an insane army of them, obviously because of performance issues and so on. But if I could have like, let's say 5 to 10 weapons, like on an optimized build, right? It could be a lot of fun.
No, it could be super fun. I would love to see that. I'd love to see a lot of Forge Guard love, to be honest, in all regards.
And since it's on Warpath, it's so much fun for me personally to optimize a build sometimes where you have great mobility at the same time. So you could like, you can get decent mobility while you're using Warpath, sorry, and it just
that is
like
true.
Fun play style. So
that is true.
You don't have to stop and summon the weapons all the time.
It would be cool if the forged weapons had a whirlwind attack. So you're spinning, they're spinning, fun all around. It would be great. Yeah, they're adding a passive that makes it do more damage and have higher AoE based on how long you're channeling for at least 2 seconds. And it adds a slash at the end. I don't know how big and how strong the slash is going to be, but it sounds like it could be fun.
What does it
It's
say exactly? So after spinning for 2 seconds, you
yes.
do a giant slash at the end. Okay, so because I was about to say, if the slash wasn't dependent on a on a charge up like that, you might be able to spam it.
Yeah.
I'm always looking at ways to break the game, obviously. But
Of
yeah,
course.
it seems like
Of course. Yeah. It seems
about that.
What I like about this is that it seems like it could offer you an option or an alternative to just reducing the mana cost all the way down. Because if you can channel it for 2 seconds, proc the slash, you get at least a small window where you can regen some mana back before you use Warpath again. So in theory, you could be able to play around with the mana cost. So that could be interesting, depending on how big the slash is and how strong it is. It says giant slash, but we don't know how giant it is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna have like an animation, because technically, let's say it's just an effect and your character doesn't even have an animation to it. It's just there's a shockwave going off or something like that.
I believe that's what it's going to be.
Potentially, you could instantly Warpath again if there's no. I don't know if there's going to be any kind of like how do you call it, animation time or whatever like that.
Yeah,
you're stuck.
But I mean,
very interesting.
If you're going to be playing around with the slash, the ultimate goal is to have it so that the slash one shots everything, right? So in theory, you would Warpath, proc the slash, and then walk and lunge to the next pack. Maybe use some other utility skill first. So you would have a window still, right?
But well, depends on how you spec your Warpath, because sometimes you're actually Warpathing almost faster than you can
walk. Yeah, that's true.
Or on a boss, for example, if you're trying to do max DPS, you might want to time it exactly every 2 seconds like that. I don't know. Yeah,
that's true. I know that increases spell damage now, so you can do what's the name of the spell you proc? It's not Rift, it's a different one. But anyways, there's with Devouring Orb. It's the same proc that you get from Devouring Orb. You can get it on Warpath. Currently, I don't know if that's getting changed. But if you want to play around with that, getting the extra spell damage is really good. Because currently, Devouring Orb spawns a lot more of those Abyssal Orbs. That's what they're called. Devouring Orb spawns a lot more Abyssal Orbs than Warpath does. And it feels like the Warpath procs are kind of redundant. So this just gives you an extra reason with the spell damage to do it with Warpath instead of replacing with something else. So that could be fun. Do you think there's any other ways to make use of the spell damage?
I don't have any specific ones in mind right now, but I don't know how Judgment, for example, just Judgment scale of just fire damage, or is it also spell damage or something?
That was an attack.
If you can add it as a... I never played it, but I heard you describe it as you can actually put a righteous fire around yourself, like a damage over time.
No, I don't think that counts because the credit path is a damage over time. Maybe it does count as a spell. So in theory, you could have consecrated ground, or whatever it's called, aura, something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to twist my brain back.
I was thinking more about me too, man. Me too. I was thinking more of Abyssal Echoes type of thing. So Devouring or Abyssal Echoes probably, right?
Either way, I love the choice. And,
me too.
Having spell damage on a mobility melee skill like that is really interesting.
Yeah, really. Yeah, sounds really fun. And then there's Echoes. What? This is the visual for the Echo Knight passive.
Oh, I was just about to say it looked like there was some spells going off there.
Yeah.
Necrotic stuff.
No, that's the eyeballs. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the next one is the Echo Knight passive. It says that while spinning, if you have traveled at least 2 meters, which I presume is a character's worth of distance, you have a chance to each second to create an echo at a recent location. So as you're channeling Warpath every 2 seconds, you proc an echo. It says there's a chance. I presume you can get it to 100%. If you can't, it will be kind of weird. But this looks really fun. I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as it looks, but it looks cool.
Yeah,
I hope it's on frame.
My first thoughts are that depending on how you play, so Warpath, from my experience, has had two different directions. If you're going like direct damage stuff, or if you're doing like damage over time ailment stuff, right?
Yeah.
So with ailments, usually you have enough damage where if you just touch the enemies once, you move past them, everything should die behind you, I feel like.
Yeah.
But this kind of leaves like a damage over time behind you ish that clears if any enemies runs in there afterwards. And the way it might stack up on bosses also adds significant single target depending on how the damage scaling is. Do we have any kind of damage penalty on the echoes?
I don't think echoes have a damage penalty, do they?
I don't think so either. Which honestly, this has to, just looking from this, seeing how often it actually procs every 2 meters, so you have to be moving, right? That's maybe one thing for single target, right? That you have to actually move. So I wonder if you move 2 meters one direction and move 2 meters back, can you just keep proccing them and maybe hit a big boss with a lot of echoes at the same time?
I presume you can.
Either way, just looking at this, it has to actually require a lot of points to get it, because look at that, you can have 3 echoes at the same time going. That's a lot of extra damage. Like, honestly, this seems kind of powerful.
Let me see if we can figure out the echo situation.
I don't think there's any. It's usually it's just an extra attack, or spell, whatever you did that counts for echoes. And I think you cannot.
Yeah, I don't think there's a penalty.
Movement skills and so on. Yeah. So just looking at the preview, that we don't ever even see the first proc doesn't even stop within the small video we can see. Does it say is it 2-second duration or what? Warpath?
He uses Warpath on the spot for 2 seconds.
Oh, and another interesting thing here is that this can actually scale with straight up movement speed, right? Because the only restriction for when you can proc it.
No, it's once every second.
Oh.
It's a chance each second to create an echo. So the maximum you can have is 2.
But that's so. But he has 3 in the video. He spawns 1 in the end.
Yeah, but I think it's right as the other one unspawns.
Maybe, yeah. And also, if it's a chance every second, how does he have it up so consistently in the video? There must be some other points connected to this node.
Maybe.
I'm imagining that you have some points leading up to it that makes it more reliable.
I'm guessing all of these, you could call them notables, are not just by themselves on the skill tree. They're followed by or led into by a bunch of other passives. Yeah, so there could be something there.
Because just looking at what's going on in that picture and just imagining that as a 1-pointer, that would be absolutely
broken.
Insane.
Yeah.
Because he's getting all these, what looks like very reliably out, like
just
multiplying his damage like crazy. It has to be a quite big investment to get this, I think.
It does. Yeah, I don't know.
Some synergy leading up to it. Yeah.
Honestly, what I was the most excited about when I saw this is figuring out whether or not this Warpath has echoed can proc Abyssal Orbs or not. Can I just spawn a bunch of Warpaths and have them procking Abyssal Orbs? That would be so cool.
Able to answer that already, right? Because I don't know, but can echoed hammers proc smite? I don't know. I didn't play enough, but you can already.
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
That's such a good question. I wish I knew the answer for.
Yeah, it's something we can test at least.
Yeah, we could. We could definitely. But yeah, that's gonna be interesting. So there's that I had forgotten about. Okay, so uniques. There's gonna be a whole bunch of uniques set items released. A lot of them are really interesting. So let's take a look at this one. Can I zoom in? So we got Bastion of Honor, which is a shield. It has 100% block chance against nearby enemies and less damage taken from nearby enemies. So I presume it doesn't say you lose block chance against enemies from further away. So it's not like it's 100% at nearby and 0% from further away or anything. It's just straight up 100% nearby enemies.
Yep.
I was trying to think what the most dangerous mobs are and whether or not you're always in melee range.
Well, there's a lot of
Right?
off-screen stuff that's kind of rippy and hardcore, like the Osprixes that can.
Yeah.
I fondly remember, my Spellblade rip in the first tournament I ever joined, where I just one tapped from an off-screen Osprix mage.
That's true.
So stuff like that is obviously not going to work against. But it also depends on what type of class and what type of build you're doing, right? Because some builds, they want to be in the enemy's face, right?
You do. That's true. I feel like for monoliths, most of those stuff you can be nearby and it works just fine. It's just arena that's the problem, because one of the deadliest things about arena is getting multiple ranged backs after a certain point and just getting completely shotgunned before I can even do anything. So in that case, this is not going to be great. So I'm guessing this is not going to be a great arena shield. Great for monoliths, great for any melee character or character that gets really close by. Do we think this is going to be good for Spellblade? Probably not. It's melee fizz. But maybe the block is strong enough, right? Just justify. You lose dual wielding though.
Yeah, dual wielding is kind of big on Spellblade.
Yeah.
You have the health, you have the mana. I just pulled it up on my screen so I can see it clearly.
And it's a kite shield, it's not too bad of a base.
You also have up to 40% less damage taken from nearby enemies. I mean, those damage reduction wood splats, they just
always really strong.
Add up.
Yeah.
So it's definitely. I like this shield because it enables certain builds, and it gives you consistent block depending on your play style. So this is actually a little bit skill based as well. So once you know the range, and if you want to 100% rely on that block, it's interesting.
It's true. The one issue I have with it is there's only so many ways you can get block effectiveness, especially if you're playing a class like Mage, for example. If you're playing Paladin or something, it's easier. But
just Sentinel in general,
Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Then we have Curse of Perseverance. It adds a +1 to necrotic spells, necrotic damage, some Hungering Souls interaction with projectile numbers. This one, it's on a Adept staff, which is not a great base. You lose a lot of flat damage in exchange for the +1. Do you know if Hungering Souls scales that hard with levels? Is it worth not having spell damage?
Something else I was thinking, I don't actually know. I didn't play a lot of Hungering Souls. I only used it for leveling really early. But I was thinking, do the projectiles shotgun on single target or not? Because I used it for damage over time stuff a lot.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, because why do you really care about those 6 extra projectiles if they don't shotgun? I don't feel like.
Wait.
I don't feel like you want to pick an item just for clear. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But it's a low level item. Like for a leveling item, I feel like this.
Yeah. Oh, that's
18.
true. Yeah. 100%.
18. Getting 73 life. You get leech. You get extra. I mean, for leveling, it's on to clear everything, the extra projectiles, and the damage and +1. It's amazing for leveling. I feel like so. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just gonna be a great leveling item.
Yeah. Unless I'm missing something with the shotgunning of Hungering Souls, which I also don't think is possible, then it's just straight up going to be a leveling weapon, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, that's Curse of Perseverance. Next one we have is a belt. It's Health Regen, Fire, and False Water Fury. Now, False Water Fury has some mana interactions. It drains your mana, but adds you some flat damage. So it's kind of the opposite of the staff, gives you a whole bunch of flat damage. This is interesting. So melee fire damage, right? And you proc it when you use a potion.
So what does
the way that it works? Okay, the way that it works. Yes. Yeah. The way that okay, so using a potion grants you False Water Fury. So whenever you pop a potion, you get the buff, right? And during False Water Fury, your mana does not regen and it's drained. So you cannot offset the drain on the mana by having mana regen. I presume it says does not regenerate, so maybe you can still gain.
But it says drain
increases
0 and accelerates by 10
each second.
So that's quite
so it's not something you can keep up indefinitely, right? And when you have it, melee attacks consume mana to gain 100 fire damage. Now 20 mana is a lot for melee builds. Melee builds usually don't have a whole lot of mana. The only mana stacking builds I can think of are sorcerer related spell builds, right? Not a whole lot of melee going on there. It seems like hefty cost, very large cost for 100 fire damage.
I'm thinking Spellblade right away, right?
Yeah.
Just because of the mana synergy on mage and so on, and and also the elemental damage. Quite a big amount of health regen as well, but I'm not really using that usually. But I think up to 26%. I think that's higher than a tier 5. Let me just check it.
Wait, 26%?
Let me see. Health.
What?
Not percent, but per second.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about a health regen. Yeah, that's actually really strong.
It's
funny enough.
It's quite high, I think, compared to what you can craft on items, and obviously that is affected by, you can buff it, you can make it stronger. There's percentage increases.
Yeah, that's true. But so does Spellblade really work around health regen?
I don't think so. I just think it's worth mentioning. I don't have an idea in my head right now.
But there's 3 options. There's Spellblade. There is Paladin with fire, melee skills, Judgment, Kappa, and
I think
Primalist, right?
I think Sentinels can play around with the health regen. There's something that boosts health regen based on strength and so on, percentage.
Yes, there's the Bear Gloves, there's a Shattered Lance content, there's the One-Headed Sword and the Relic. So none of them take the belt slot. In theory, you could do a lot of health regen stuff with that. Maybe. But it doesn't look like it was designed for Paladin, though. But it could be. Could be.
I just like to have the options. With interesting uniques, we've all been a little bit sad sometimes before that you can't use Fractured Crown on anything else than Mage, for example, because it's not built for the other classes necessarily, but it could be nice to have the option. I would have used it.
That's true. Well, I feel like Spellblade is the way to go with Mana Strike, right? It's the only way to reliably just chug all of your mana and then get it back
the interesting really fast. Part with if you're saying Mana Strike, depends on if you're trying to scale the spell necessarily or the attack, but mostly it's gonna be a Spellblade, I think.
Yeah. All right, then we're getting a set item. Now, there's 2 pieces to this. I think the staff, there was a staff that was announced previously. Maybe just done. I had some, wait. Intermission. Technical difficulties. Let's get the music back. There we go. Amazing, we got Jess back. Yeah? You were going to say something?
We didn't talk about the set item in the end. On the same image.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I was just mentioning because it's a 2-piece set, and I was trying to figure out what the other piece is. Right?
I was just zoned out. Sorry.
Right, yeah. So okay, so let's talk about the helmet, and we'll figure out the other piece later, right? So this helmet has +1 to lightning, and shock chance per intelligence. Now, do we struggle to get shock chance to a point where this would make that big a difference?
No, the way I like to think about it is how on an end game build, how much intelligence can we expect to get? And I'm thinking, without thinking
50
too
plus?
hard about it, I was thinking very, very high end. Let's even imagine that we go a little bit beyond and just say 100. Let's just say that's extreme, pretty high. You could probably get there with like maybe some exalted stuff or whatever. This one doesn't have a lot of intelligence, which 6 is decent at least.
Right.
But let's just say it was 100. 100% shock chance. It's nice, but it's not that hard to get shock. You can get, it's like, is it shock chance that goes to 20 on the small?
Let's find out.
No, I forget.
Let's
you can get a
debug
decent
shock.
amount of I think you can get a decent amount of shock on the, or is it just stun that goes that high on the small idols?
Oh, the small items. I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah, because usually because I've been playing a little bit of the stun paired with shock, and I remember there's some super powerful small idols. But now when I think about it, it might just be stun chance to get on those. I don't remember.
Let's see, shock. It stacks up to 20 times. 20. Jesus, 20 stacks of shock would be intense. Well, I mean, shock is always good because it reduces lightning res, but you already get so much shock chance in other places. Because one stack of shock is going to be 5% negative res to whatever enemy, right? If you have 100 int, if you're stacking int, right?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest part about shock for me was always just the
stun.
how way it deals with stun
right.
avoidance, right? Where
I feel like this is gonna be stronger as a placeholder item. It's a level 42 requirement +1 lining pen. That's pretty good and just flexible. You can use it with almost anything lighting related. But late game, its helmet slots are very strong. Helmet slots have some of the strongest affixes you can get. Sacrificing helmet slot like that is rough.
Yeah, but okay, we didn't actually talk about the strongest part of this one. I didn't talk about it any. Well, I was wrong. Never mind. I think I'm thinking about the staff that's actually scaling flat damage from intelligence as well. I think that's the second piece of the set. But I would agree, this one giving a +1 and the penetration you're not gonna use. Oh, it's the set bonus. It's the set bonus that gives you one.
Yeah, one spell damage per inch. This is 100 flat. That's a lot of flat, actually.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily care too much about the stats on this helmet, but 100 flat, depending if it takes up the weapon slot, that might just be almost completely broken if you don't have to sacrifice your weapon slot. But I think you do. I just don't remember the other item in my head.
Trying to find it. Found a helmet again. I can't find the other one. I was looking on Discord to see if I can find it. Can't seem to find it. But yeah, the spell damage is really strong.
Yep.
It's gonna depend on what the other set item is. I should have found it first.
Being a staff with kind of low spell damage, so it kind of evens.
On a bad base, yeah.
But yeah.
Might be the case.
In general, I love stat stacking items. That's why I love Morning Frost as well in this game. It's dangerous, but it's interesting.
It is. Yeah, right.
Dangerous from a balance perspective.
I mean, you also lose, what is it? Fire damage, crit multi. What can you roll on helmet bases for mage? I think you can get adaptive spell damage.
Helmet is interesting for a lot. You get a lot of your +2 skills. You get your cooldown reduction. You get a lot of stuff on helmet.
Yeah. I meant the implicit, because this one's ward retention, which is not very good.
Yeah, you have crit.
There's mana. There's crit chance, fire damage.
Yeah, I remember the fractured crown. The gilded crown is a crit chance. Oh, do you have one with adaptive? I think
there must be. I can check.
The chest piece is adaptive. I'm going from like memory from like.
I'll check the planner. Just fine. But yeah, ward retention is not the best one, for sure.
Now that I think about it, I think it's Acolyte that gets adaptive spell damage for minions on helmet, right?
Okay, so there's crit chance up to 70%, 12% mana on the Celestial Helm, fire damage, flat mana, and fire res. There's no flat damage on helmets. Yeah,
that's good. I mean, good it is. It wouldn't be good if you actually want to build around it, obviously. But yeah,
Of course.
the item is interesting. I want to see the second piece, but
yeah, me too. I wonder if it's actually been revealed and we were right about it, or if I was just been tripping out. It didn't actually reveal it because I couldn't find it. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. So we got 3 other ones. We got, what is this? Polearm. Now this is more polearm action. I was trying to do the polearm build with Void Knight. It didn't work out too well. Polearms are kind of an awkward item type if you don't see it too often. This one has minion damage, melee damage, and Jade Dust. Now, Jade Dust is a known second buff that adds minion damage. Oh no, it grants some poison chance, tripled for throwing attacks. Okay, what's the minion that has a poison throwing attack? Is it the rogue skeleton?
Yeah, that's the only of the minions I didn't play with the skeleton.
I think it's the rogue skeleton. Yeah. Poison damage modifiers applied to skeleton rogues. That's great. And poison damage with each as health. It seems like it's just going to be a staple for poison skeleton rogues. Doesn't seem like there's too much room for playing with any other kind of content, right?
And it seems like you are forced into using harvest, right? Because it says chance
on hit with harvest.
Harvest,
yeah, it doesn't seem.
But that line, your poison damage modifiers also apply to your skeleton.
That's an interesting one. Yeah,
I love the problems with ailments on minions in general. In my opinion, is that they don't get you. There's no affixes to scale it.
Yeah,
all of the affixes are for you, and those being able to apply those affixes to minions makes it probably pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
would imagine. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah,
but that's also one interesting thing about this though is that so now we solved that issue with adding those ailment stats to what do you call it? Acolyte that can use harvest, right?
Yeah.
But and especially it seems like the skeleton rogues. But what about all the other minions? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It just straight up only applies to skeleton rogues. The poison damage modifiers. The only thing that applies to something else is the Jade Dust, which is exclusive to harvest. So not non-acolyte. Yeah, it seems to me like just a skeleton rogues polearm. Doesn't seem like to me like anything else.
You could discard the harvest thing completely, right?
Yeah.
Because just on its own, pretty damn nice for your skeleton rogues, right? But
and the minion damage roll is actually pretty on par with other affix rolls.
But then again, when you think about it, it's 50% that's tripled for throwing attacks, so you're getting 150% poison chance on your rogues. It's probably pretty hard not to use that. Yeah,
right. But it's so rough to justify using harvest, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at least you have the option. It's interesting.
It is. Okay, next one. This one is a pair of gloves. It's a crit-based one. It gives you crit multi damage over time, which I believe there's some ways you can actually make damage over time interact with crit multi. But I think that it's mostly also on the glove slot. But anyways, it gives you resists, add a critical strike multiplier converted to bleed chance. So basically, at a 0.6 effectiveness, your crit multi applies to damage over time.
You said bleed
for bleed. I said bleed chance? My bad. So basically, if you have 100 crit multi, you get 60% bleed effectiveness. Now, bleed effectiveness is good because it's not bleed damage, right? It's a separate multiplier. So it goes along with your bleed damage. It has crit multi converted to poison effectiveness. I'm guessing both of them can roll up to 60, right? Or one is 60, one is 40.
They're not showing the ranges.
They're not. They're not.
But either way, this is honestly really, really good in my opinion.
It is.
Because this is some of those essential stats that you need on your ailment builds. it's a straight up multiplier.
Yeah.
That's usually really hard to come by. And yeah, this enables using a lot of existing stuff that has crit multiplier, right? So you're enabling a lot of very interesting builds for bleed and poison here. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thing is, I don't think Rogue would use this with poison. Maybe Rogue would use this with bleed because the bleed support it gets is not too strong. So it's looking to me a lot more like Sentinel. Right?
At least we're not restricted. So we have
or Acolyte even. But Acolyte doesn't get crit multi. That's not a good one. It sounds to me like Sentinel.
I would enjoy creating a build for any of the classes around this. I haven't. It takes a lot of thinking to get through.
Does
where it's really viable or not. I haven't really thought too much about it. But yeah, anything that has poison and bleed, this could be potentially interesting. We have some crit multi on it and damage over time, and poison and fizz resistance. So it's not like, and it rolls quite high on the fizz resistance. I wonder if the poison resistance goes as high.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you had to sacrifice resists and HP, it would be complicated. Hey, what's up, Lizard? How's it going? But yeah, since you don't have to sacrifice all of it, it's fine. You see, it just smells to me like Sentinel bleed. I don't know, but it could work with other stuff. You're right.
I just love it. I love it. I can't wait to try to build around
big props to Jay the product for designing the item along with the team, since this is a community designed unique item. The next one is Marina's Lost Soul. It's also necrotic based, a lot of necrotic content, and it's also Hungering Souls. So okay, what does this one do? This one does have flash, unlike the other one we were looking at. And it has 20% increased effect of possess inflicted by Hungering Souls per stack of damned on you, and you're damned when you cast a spell. Now damned, I think damned scales indefinitely. Right? I'm not sure if there's a limit to how many damned stacks you can get.
I vaguely remember this, but it's not.
Maybe it's up to 3 stacks. Let's find out. Damned.
Yeah.
That's
I think 3.
Maximum instances unlimited. Duration 3 seconds. Necrotic damage over time, and reduced health regen. Those are the effects of damned, right? So it gives you effect of possess inflicted by Hungering Souls, and inflicts damage when you cast a spell. So you want to be casting spells getting damaged. You need to mitigate the necrotic damage. You cannot rely on health regen because you're going to lose all of it to the damage stacks. And you're gaining effect of possess. Now, possess, is there any interaction specifically with possess?
Hungering Souls? I'm just straight up blanking on what possess does here.
Basically, Hungering Souls has a hit portion and a possession, which is a damage over time.
So yeah, so right? It's just the damage over time of Hungering Souls? Or?
Yes, basically. Let me check exactly what it does.
Effect of possess. Well, I mean, if you just have to think about it like a straight up 140% multiplier on that, because I don't think you can get effect of possess anywhere else. Maybe on the skill tree.
I don't think you can.
I haven't checked the specialization skill tree into the details on Hungering Souls, but if this is the only instance of it, just getting a straight up extra 140% multiplier is interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't have that much experience with Hungering Souls in general. But yeah.
Apparently, according to Lizard in the chat, shout out. Apparently there's some interaction with Death Seal, I think. Right? Because I don't know, but thing is I haven't played so much with Death Seal. I tried to avoid it as much as I could, so I'm not too sure about how those two things interact. It's talking about it's applying to possess inflicted by Hungering Souls, but maybe there's some other interaction that happens with it.
It's interesting if there is, like Lisa is saying, there's some kind of interaction with the self-damned, like you can damn yourself over and over. I love that if that's the case. When you're getting minus health, not that high flat damage here. It's a level 78 weapon. Yeah,
Right.
there's a decent amount of spell damage and so on, but yeah, those two unique abilities, that's what we have to look out for: the increased effect of possess and being able to damn yourself, right?
Okay, so apparently Death Seal casts Lingering Souls automatically.
Yeah, I remember something about that. I never used it.
Me neither.
But why
it's one
would
of the few
being
things.
damned help that? Yeah, we have to go and check the details after.
Well,
those
apparently,
two unique stats, yeah.
There's a strong interaction with Death Seal. I believe Lizard, so if he's saying there is, I'm not going to question it. I haven't played Death Seal, I'm not qualified to answer, right? So, yeah, there's this one. And then we have the gloves that are on Discord. Let me find it. Oh, did I close it? God damn it. Can I open it up again? Here we go.
Ravenous Void. Yeah.
Yes, there they are. So it's a gluttonous glove. Apparently, that's either a new base or a specific base for this unique that gives you vitality. It gives you a stack of Void Barrier every 3 seconds while above your endurance threshold. Basically makes it so that you get a ton of damage reduction, and when you drop below your endurance threshold, you lose all of it, and you get Time Rot inflicted on you. Now, I've already talked about this item with Nag a little bit, and it seems like it's really strong. Like, really, really strong. You're just giving up basically your endurance, right?
So you're getting a ton of health for a unique, right? The straight up 10 vitality and 15 health. It's obviously not the interesting part of the unique, but it's there and it helps. You have 25% of physical damage taken as void. You have certain other items that synergizes with this, right? You know, damage taken as something else is always interesting, as something they have to be careful with. Then you have straight up to 10% less void damage taken. The more damage you can take on void damage, the more impactful that's going to be. Obviously, a nice damage reduction there. And gain a stack of Void Barrier every 3 seconds while above your endurance threshold. That's the one that seems... we're not exactly sure about the mechanics of this one, but it sounds like if you're running around and you're max health, you're going to have 5 Void Barrier stack.
Yes.
And if that's the case, you're straight up getting 25% damage reduction. With the only downside being that once you drop below your endurance threshold, you convert those 5 stacks into stacks of Time Rot, which doesn't seem like that big of a downside for
it isn't.
Upside. I mean, yeah.
Honestly, the biggest downside to me is the fact that it disables generation for 10 seconds. So basically you'll lose all of that damage reduction whenever you drop below your endurance threshold. And an actual curious part that I hadn't noticed before is it has endurance threshold on the item. So endurance threshold is going to be upped a little bit just by equipping this, which could make it a little bit more rough.
The only interesting thing you have to, in my opinion, is that endurance and endurance threshold are very powerful mechanics by themselves. You can get 60% endurance, right? And the higher the threshold you push, that's a very, very powerful defensive mechanic. But it comes at a cost, right? You're losing quite a few affixes on your
a lot of
items
them.
and so on. And this is kind of an alternative where, because imagine like worst case scenario with these gloves, imagine you almost fill your entire health bar with endurance threshold. Obviously that's going to feel very awkward at that point, you know? So it seems like kind of a pair of gloves you can throw on if you're not pushing your endurance threshold too much, and then you have those affixes to spend on other defenses basically, right?
Yeah.
Which in my opinion, it seems very interesting, powerful.
Yeah, and even though it has interactions with void damage, it doesn't. It only interacts with your defenses towards void, not exactly with your damage, void damage that you deal. So it's not necessarily stuck with just Void Knight, right? You could use it on pretty much anything, as long as it fits, right? especially something with a very large health pool, because then the extra endurance threshold doesn't really hurt that much. So yeah, it's gonna be really strong. I wonder how rare it's gonna be. I wonder if it's gonna be a common.
Ooh.
Right?
I just noticed something. Look, it's required level 91.
Yeah.
What? I've never
Very
seen
high.
an item like that before.
I think there's like 1 or 2 items that have the high of a level requirement. Yeah.
91. Okay.
It makes sense. It makes sense that it requires such a high level.
That makes me think that they're gonna add it to like some bus.
High tier content.
Like, yeah, maybe some new content. I don't know. Something we haven't.
Well, the new game modes are not gonna be coming out this patch. According to the last dev stream, they're working on one of them, and it's currently already been designed and conceptualized. They're just developing it and working on it. It's not gonna come out this patch, so this drop is not gonna be tied to any new mechanics. But we don't know where it's gonna drop.
It just makes me wonder, because usually you don't drop. Well, you can drop items you can't use if you're running higher level content, but you can't gamble it. I don't know. Just that high of an required item level, character level. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
It is. Okay. Yeah. So that's, I believe, almost, if not all of the unique items that are coming out. Patch 0.8.3 is going to be coming out on the 3rd of September. So tune in for that. It's going to be 1 week after the next Race to Erebus, which I announced at the start of the stream. If you haven't caught that, watch the VOD, check out the Discord. I'm going to be posting about it on Reddit and on YouTube as well. What new games are going to be coming out soon this month of September? We're going to be getting D2R Remaster on the 23rd. Do you want to talk about that at all? Let's see.
Yeah.
D2 Remaster. Here we go. Yeah, it's going to be coming out on the 23rd. That is in 2 days. No, it's September. Oh, it's 1 month from now. Oh, man. Oh, that's actually great. It gives you enough time to play the new patch, right? So yeah, we're going to be playing the Remaster, Resurrect, Rework, D2 stuff. So,
I love Diablo 2. I'm just going to preface by saying all this. I love Diablo 2. It's been a big part of my gaming career, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
Not talking job stuff. You just spend a great time playing it, and I love the mods. I'm gonna be playing it, but I'm a little bit worried that although it is an amazing game, I don't think it's a 2021 game. And just having updated graphics, it's gonna be fun for a week or two, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And at that point, I've already done everything there is to do in that game. Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
Right.
It looks beautiful.
Does, yeah. I don't know. I feel like Diablo 2 is a great high replayability value game, but that's before we had all the stuff we have today, right? Nowadays we have so many games with the same type of characteristics to it, the same replayability value and all of that. So it's probably gonna be a couple weeks, just nostalgia trip, just having some fun. It's gonna be great. I'm probably gonna be playing it, most likely. The cinematics look great. Did you see the new thing with Marias and all the new cinematics to it? It looks amazing. There's actual new stuff. The cinematics for D2 originally were very memorable. Very, very strong scenes. They don't live up to this day all that well, but back in the day it was crazy. It was amazing. And the new ones look extra good, and they shine some light on the actual storyline and lore. The previous ones were kind of ominous and mysterious. We didn't really understand what was happening, what was up with that guy, the mysterious figure and everything. This one's a lot more clear in that sense, and it looks great. It looks amazing. I'm gonna be checking it out. What else is gonna be coming out? There's gonna be a Quake. Oh yeah, they just released a Quake remaster for all of you guys out there who played way back in the day. Quake 1 and 2, I believe, are now remastered and available for purchase. It's not a complete re-release. They're not redoing the game. It's just remastering new sprites, new visuals, right? were you ever into FPSs back in the day?
Yeah,
Quake, Unreal
all the
Tournament,
shooters.
Halo,
Unreal
all that
Tournament,
stuff. Yeah.
I missed Halo a little bit because it was more on Xbox and I was playing PlayStation basically.
Yeah. Me too.
But all the Quakes, all the PC games, Counter Strike, played it so much growing up.
Oh
I
yeah.
loved it. But these days I don't play that much. I do like it, but honestly, when I play FPS these days, it's been more like I'm a big fan of the Borderlands series.
Yeah.
But it's like an RPG element to it as well.
That's a good one.
So yeah, but I still like it. I still like it. It's just like I'm kind of like a guy that gets invested into the games I'm playing. So I don't spread myself too thin. I usually have like 1 or 2 games I'm playing at any certain amount of time period.
Me too, and it's a struggle really, because a lot of times I just want to play a game to have fun, and I'm like, man, all these games that I want to play require such a high time investment and thought and exercise. It's complicated. It's hard to be like we are. But yeah, Quake Remaster is out there for people who are into that. There's going to be a new Forza Horizon coming out in September for people who like racing stuff. It's going to be free on Game Pass, probably. I played the current one on Xbox and it was good. So yeah, I highly recommend. Check it out. What's this guy? Oh, Quake developer. I'll leave it on. I ain't cutting that out. And this one. Okay, this is probably the most exciting one, aside from the D2 remaster. On September 2nd, we're getting to see Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Now, let's see if I can get a graphic for this. Wrath of the Righteous. Now, did you play Pathfinder Kingmaker?
Nope.
At all?
I actually don't even know what it is.
Okay, great. I'll give you a rundown. I'm just gonna pull up the graphics real quick. Here we go. Look at that, beautiful. Okay, so Pathfinder Kingmaker is a classic RPG, kind of on the same vein as Baldur's Gate, Divinity: Original Sin, all those games. And the Pathfinder rule set is sort of separate from D&D usual RPG rule set. It's a weird thing. I never really got into tabletop RPGs all that much to know what I'm talking about. Now, Pathfinder Kingmaker is a wonderful classic RPG. It's one of those games that opens up so many possibilities in terms of building your character's choices. If you were upset with Cyberpunk and the way that the choices don't really change anything, this is the kind of game for you. This is the kind of game that you can actually make vastly different choices and it completely changes the game. It's kind of what it's about. And they're now coming out with a sequel to Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is called Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. It's going to be out on September 2nd. This one, together with Baldur's Gate 3, means there's going to be a lot of content for classic RPG, for people into it, you know? So it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. I'll definitely check that one out, 100%. So yeah, that's all the releases I really care about and I think are relevant. Do you think anything else is coming out that's interesting to talk about?
Mostly looking forward to the Last Epoch patch.
Oh yeah,
and,
patch on the 3rd of September. Check it out.
Eat at least a month of my life, at least. So
yeah,
I'm not really worried about any other games right now. Yeah, about it.
Right. Well, is there going to be anything new and interesting happening with your channel and your gaming career, as you phrased it? What's going to be happening in the next couple weeks and month?
I'm probably going to be participating, hopefully if the time slot allows, in the race you just announced.
Right.
It's going to be super fun. I love the last one. I think I'm slowly going to be transitioning into more and more Last Epoch gaming again, which means more streams.
Yeah.
I've been kind of taking a break because PoE, your stream gets kind of buried. I know I'm a super small stream, and the reason I stream is to interact with people. I love chatting with people who are dropping in on voice and text. So yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully we'll have some fun with Last Epoch.
That's true, yeah. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat with that. But yeah, patch coming out September 3rd. Check it out. There's going to be more information about it on Discord, Reddit. You can get info about the race too. I'm going to be closing off the podcast right now, probably. And I'd like to thank you for coming along at such a short notice, Nag. It was a pleasure to be going over all these wonderful, wonderful changes and new content with you. And thank you everyone who showed up and watched it. Everyone who's going to watch it on YouTube, this is going to be uploaded. Check it out if you missed it. And thank you all for being around. And I'm excited to make a next rendition of the podcast in the weeks to come. Kisses, much love. I'm gonna cut out the video right here.
Flex.